The world is going through changes happening at a speed that we have never seen before. This is leading to disruption, chaos, panic, fear, hysteria, and a turbulent economy and marketplace. How do you protect your wealth in a turbulent world? How do you invest for cash flow in alternative assets to escape the rat race in times of uncertainty? How do you decentralize yourself, family, your community, your business, and your investments to become sovereign and escape the matrix? If you are looking for strategies, tactics, and techniques to escape the rat race and matrix, you are in the right place. My name is MC Lobsher, and this is Cashflow Ninja. This is Cashflow Ninja. I'm MC Lobsher. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode and spending the most valuable resource, your time, once again with me. Everything Cashflow Ninja is at cashflowninja.com. That's cashflowninja.com. Books, podcasts, reports, and much, much more. And don't forget to sign up for the #1 weekly newsletter, The Wealth Dojo, in the alternative wealth strategy and alternative asset investing space. You can subscribe to this weekly newsletter that gets delivered straight to your inbox at cashflowninja.com/subscribe. I've got a fantastic show for you today. I'm joined by Louis O'Connor from Strategic Metals Invest. We're going to talk about strategic metals, also referred to as rare earth metals or rare earth elements. Louis has been on the show several times discussing this pretty interesting and unique asset class and niche. I would highly recommend you check out all of his previous conversations with me at cashflowninja.com. Louis, it's great to see you.
Hello there. Hello. Good to be here, MC. Good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been looking forward to our conversation and getting an update on rare earth metals, strategic metals. But before we jump into that and the exciting trends in that space, can you please share for our listeners that's not familiar with you and what you do a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you're up to?
Sure, absolutely. So my name's Louis O'Connor, and I'm coming to you from Europe. Actually, I'm Irish. You can probably tell from the accent. Our business is based in Europe, although I'm in Ireland. Actually, our main office is in Frankfurt in Germany. We are an industry, our core business, most important thing to know about us is our core business is we buy and sell metals in the supply chain to industry. So we're buying from producers, as you'll hear a bit later. Mostly you're in China. China has a sort of a quasi-monopoly on these particular raw materials we're going to talk about. They're known as technology metals. Some people call them energy transition metals now, defense metals, aviation, but they're actually all umbrella terms for a small group. The scientific term would be rare earth elements. There's about 17 of them. But yeah, our core business is we buy these raw materials and we resell them to we've more than 3,000 clients now in 70 different countries. Now, it's important to mention that from the beginning, because if it wasn't our core business, it wouldn't be possible or it wouldn't be safe to have what we call, in America, you might call our side hustle, which is our side business, which is we offer private investors the opportunity to purchase and hold these metals like gallium and germanium. Funny enough, people are hearing more and more about them. When I first maybe came on the show with you a couple of years ago, MC, people might have been a bit puzzled when they heard gallium, germanium, but it's been on the news in the US that the US needs to wean its dependence off China, as does Europe, but also China is currently restricting those two I mentioned, actually, gallium, germanium. They're restricting the export to the US, to Europe, to South Korea, to Japan as a sort of a trade technology war. So you could say we're right in the middle of that. Our core business is that we buy these metals mostly from China. But fortunately, we also have a side offer where private investors can participate in the supply chain. They can sort of take advantage of these trade and technology tensions and escalations and purchase them exactly the same paradigm as owning gold or silver. You buy the metals, you physically own them. And I'll get more into that a little bit later.
Great. So for new listeners and viewers, I would highly recommend you check out all of the interviews we've done with Louis O'Connor. You just go to cashflowninja.com and you could type in his name, Louis O'Connor, and you'll find all of the different conversations we've had just about strategic metals, these rare earth elements or metals as they're called. Now, as Louis was saying, what they're doing is a very similar service that gold and silver buyers might be familiar with, where you can go and buy it and they'll store it and warehouse it for you in a space in Frankfurt, Germany, because it has to be warehoused and stored a very, very specific way. Otherwise, you could lose all of its value if it's not, right? And then it can be sold back to them at a later date. What I find fascinating about this space and learning about this particular asset class is here you have an asset class that number one, not a lot of people know about it, but they use it every single day. I mean, if you have a cell phone, you're using the metals, right? So a lot of people don't know about it. It's in their lives every single day with their laptops, cell phones, tablets, driving electric vehicles, going to a hospital and getting certain scans done, utilizing similar equipment. It's used in the military. There's so many applications that it's in, yet not a lot of people even know they exist. So I find that fascinating. The other thing that I also find fascinating is that China basically has all the control over this. They what is it, Louis? Like 90% of the global supply China is controlling?
More than 90%. In some cases, gallium, as an example, 98%. But usually, for not all of them, there's about 10, but in 6 or 8 of those 10, it's over 90%. In other cases, it's 60%. So it's definitely a quasi-monopoly, if not quite a monopoly.
Yeah, so you have this asset class which not a lot of people know about. Everybody's using it. There's a massive demand for it in all of these industries that we've already mentioned. And I mean, throw in this massive war, even if this World War III doesn't happen, the buildup of arms is going to it's going to result in a massive demand for these metals, right? So even if everybody's saying, well, the war would impact this, I'm like, just the threat of it and the spending, military spending, U.S. is going to increase. Everybody else is going to eventually increase too. Even if nothing happens, there's still going to be a massive demand for it. So a huge demand. And then you have a monopoly on this from one big nation. I mean, it sets up an extremely big opportunity and asymmetric play, which, I mean, we talk about it. Everybody always asks me, what do you mean? This is exactly what I mean. It tees it up really, really nice. Now, what are some of the trends you're seeing and exciting trends with regards to strategic metals, rare earth elements or metals as they're called?
Yeah, well, just before I answer you, actually, what you just said there, MC, is actually already happening. And what I mean by that is that since August last year, China started to restrict the export of gallium. Then in November, germanium, and then in January, 4 rare earths: dysprosium, praseodymium, neodymium, and terbium. So those are 6 of the raw materials we offer now. All of those metals have multiple applications, including obviously dual use, civilian use, and military use. And what's happening just in the last 6 months is China is the way that what it used to be, that if you were a producer of gallium, you could just export to whoever you wanted. You could just go about your business. Since August last year, you have to apply for a license from the Chinese Ministry, the Department of Defense, basically, to export gallium. And what it is, it's so they can get a look at their consignee. They can see who you're selling the gallium to, and they'll either stamp it yay or nay. And the reason they're saying it's for national security, because they say these raw materials also have military applications. So even though you could say we're already in a Cold War 2.0, except it's not an arms race, it's a semiconductor race, or it's a race for the raw materials for semiconductors. And that's exactly part of these applications. As you mentioned, there's plenty of other applications as well. Look, we're in a technology age, so they are literally the backbone of all manufacturing in the 21st century. They're the downstream raw materials that sort of ultimately become trillions and trillions of dollars in upstream GDP. But just to focus a little bit on trends. Now, as you pointed out, rightly so, it's a relatively new asset class. On the industry side, we're in business for 30 years. So since 1999, we're buying and selling. But we've only been offering the raw materials to private investors since about 2010. And we're the only ones that do it. There's most of the other industry suppliers like ourselves, they're smart. They focus on what they do best. They buy and sell the raw materials. And we're just lucky enough to be a little bit more entrepreneurial. It's a family business. The owner has some sort of, some children grown up, and they're a bit entrepreneurial. So we've also sort of taken, gone up the value chain a bit by having a storage facility to store and then allowing private investors. But what's very interesting, if you look, you can see on our website, for example, the historical pricing, say from about 2010, you'll see that the prices have always been steadily increasing, always, no question. Simply for two reasons. One, as you mentioned, like a smartphone, we touch and see, like you can swipe your phone because of indium, which is one of them. There's about 12 metals in micro doses in your phone. Gold and silver are in your phone, but the other 10 are the ones I'm talking about that you wouldn't even know: gallium, germanium. Now, if Apple, for example, if there's a small price increase for gallium, it's just way too more costly. It's a catastrophe for Apple or any manufacturer to consider stopping production. So they just absorb the price increases. So the prices are steadily going up. But what we want to focus on today is a little bit on trends. When or how can there be, sort of price increases or steep, if you will, price escalations? And we've had two things happen in the last 15 years. I'm going to tell you what happened, and then I'm going to tell you what's about to happen, because this is what's getting very interesting over the next 5 years. So, as I said, normally, if you look, you'll see they're going up. They could be up 12%, 18%, 28% a year. However, you'll notice in 2012, the prices really spiked. And the reason for that was there was a dispute between Japan and China. The Japanese detained a captain of a fishing boat in undisputed waters. And in retaliation for that, the Chinese started to restrict the export of these raw materials, just like they just began 6 months ago. But the first time they did it, and the only time they did it previously, was back in 2012. And you'll notice then, over a period of 4 or 5 or 6 months, the prices really did escalate. I mean, they went 4x, 5x in the space of 5 months. So it's only when we have a significant sort of a worldwide event that you'll see them, because I'm not talking, we don't really want day traders as investors. We don't want people to think they're going to make a fortune in 6 months. It's a steadily 3 to 5 year play. But if there's a significant worldwide event, they can escalate. So you'll see they went up about 2012, and that dispute was resolved. Everything sort of went back to normal, and the prices went back down to where they rightfully should be. So everything was fine then, say, from about 2013, 2014 until COVID. And you'll notice then during the COVID years, 2020, 2021, when COVID ended, if you will, and all of a sudden Boeing and Airbus were ordering planes again, and the world just got back into business, there wasn't enough raw material to go around. And once again, we had price increases. We had, terbium was up, I think, 500% in 3 years. Hafnium was up 200%. Again, a significant worldwide event occurred. Now, we've had a price correction since then. In 2022 and 2023, everything has sort of settled and the prices have gone down, and pretty much they're about as low now as they ever will be. They're just pretty much, the price correction has occurred. But the next big, I don't want to call it a trend, but this is another major event, which is if you look at any reputable price reporting agency, such as Fast Markets or Argus or Shanghai Metals Exchange or TO Raw Materials in Switzerland, if you look at a price reporting or Asian Metals, I can send them to anybody that wants to check them. You'll see that they're all predicting, beginning now and continuing to 2033 and beyond, much higher price increases. The reason for that is, whether you like it or not, or whether you agree with it or not, we are going to this energy transition. We're going, I don't think we can meet the targets, some policymakers are saying, but the truth of it is, we're going to transition to electric cars, to more wind power, more solar. And at the moment, the infrastructure is not quite there for that to happen. But as soon as the infrastructure comes in, there will not be enough of these raw materials to ground. There just will not be enough. Not only will there be shortages, but there just won't be enough to go around. So between now and 2033, all we see literally is continual rise in prices. So that's the next big hit, if you will. But look, that's good news for investors. Maybe not great news if you're a manufacturer of electric cars, but the truth of it is, the manufacturers will absorb the price because they don't have a choice. They're not going to let a factory shut down because of an increase in the price of gallium.
How do you achieve clarity, certainty, and predictability in a world, economy, and markets that are volatile and chaotic? How do you have confidence in an environment where change and disruption is constant? Setting up infinite banking is how you establish certainty in an uncertain world, predictability in an unpredictable world. With an infinite banking policy, you have your capital warehoused outside of the Wall Street casino, where it is guaranteed never to go down in value and guaranteed to grow tax-free. You have guaranteed access to your capital, and you also will be able to access your capital tax-free to use to capitalize on opportunities as you come across them. Creating your own banking system with infinite banking can be your secret weapon to protect and grow wealth during turbulent times. You can watch a presentation and explore infinite banking options for you and your family at yourownbankingsystem.com. That's yourownbankingsystem.com. Even with the downturn, Louis, hasn't the year-on-year increases been around, 30% of strategic metals and rare earth elements?
Correct. Even with the price correction, so for the last 5 years, on average, they were up about 34% a year. Now, some of them are less than that, but by and large, they're up somewhere between 20 to 34%, even after we had that price correction. So it's a very good point to bring up, MC, because we suggest to our clients, look, if you do make this purchase, we tell them up front, look, we don't want day traders. We want people to purchase these metals and have the ability to hold them for 3 to 5 years. If you're willing and able to do that, you'll see good, steady, historically anyway, you'll see good, steady returns.
One of the reasons why I wanted to share again this asset class with folks is there's a tool now available for folks. I believe it's trueflation.org or trueflation.com, but it's an AI model that scrapes the internet and then calculates your actual inflation. And I know, Louis, you'll be shocked to know this, that the inflation numbers that the governments are putting out all over the world versus the actual inflation numbers that the AI came up with, the data, is night and day, right? Complete night and day. And actual, the compounding inflation where you're at from 2020 to where we're at right now was almost 26%. It
was like 25.8% is what this AI model came up with, right? Now, if you think about it, many of our listeners and viewers listening to this that go and buy things in the stores, they will be listening and going, yeah, that's basically what it is. And what's fascinating too is when you look at inflation, one of the tricks, there are many, many tricks that the government uses to calculate their numbers and their data, and not just the U.S. government, everybody else, right? What's the saying? When you torture data, it confesses. So they torture this data, and they play a lot of tricks. And one of the tricks that they use, besides the fact that they now cut out all the energy to be included in the CPI inflation numbers, which is, I mean, the world runs on energy, right? So why wouldn't we include that in CPI inflation numbers? But one of the tricks that they play is replacement. So what that means is, let's just say you buy steak and you eat a filet mignon steak. So what this method involves is then saying, well, you can have a skirt steak for about the same price. So technically, you're still eating steak, so there's no real inflation there, which everybody was probably shaking their heads. But this is what's going on. That's why you're getting such low inflation numbers, because they've got all these tricks they're playing.
Yes.
But on things that you cannot replace, like you can't swap out, you could swap out a filet mignon for a skirt steak, but you cannot, for example, swap out car insurance. It's all math. Insurance is math. So if you're going from car insurance carrier A to car insurance carrier B, same models, zip code, drivers, ages of the drivers, the data that they have of all the different accidents, from fender benders to complete totals, everything, then, and your driving record, then they come up with a number for you. It's all just algos, right? And for most people, if they shop around, I did this in the past year because I got my bill and it was like between 25 and 30% higher. And I'm like, this is out of control. Call the next guy, same price range. Call the next guy, same price range. So where this comes in is you can't swap out strategic metals and rare earth elements for anything else. That's what it is. So you see, the kind of the increase year on year, it kind of has been a great hedge besides all of the other variables that you've mentioned. It's been a pretty great hedge for actual inflation. So folks want solutions. They hear about all the complaints and all the troubles and all the negatives. Here's a solution. So that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, MC. At the very, very minimum, it's a terrific hedge against inflation. At the very bare minimum, that's what it is. However, we're also going through this transition. Nobody in the world would argue that demand for these raw materials is not going to continue to increase, and not just for energy transition, for technology, for military applications, for medical devices, for aviation, for space technology. So we have a good hedge against inflation. We've strong demand that will not let up, and then throw into the equation, we've one country with a quasi-monopoly on the market, with 50% of the world's reserves, probably a generational head start technology-wise on the refining and processing of these raw materials. So it's a gift of an investment if you're in partnership, with a trusted supplier. I mean, if somebody's selling gallium on eBay or something, obviously, that's for hobbyists. We're actually in the industry and we're inviting investors to join. Basically, what it is, it's an offer to participate in the industry with us, a safe passage in and out of the industry. And that's the only way to do it, obviously, because, there's no point in me or you having gallium or germanium, stored here in my safe, because, the only end buyer is, a medical device manufacturer, thermometer manufacturer, phone manufacturer, aviation. So yeah, it's a lovely new ripe opportunity, but must be looked at in a very discerning and cautious manner.
Yeah. Definitely one of the areas. I mean, gold and silver buyers already into physical metals. whether they take self-custody or they store it with a provider. This kind of falls into that bucket. And there's a lot of people that have reached out, over the past, I would say 6 months, especially. I mean, the emails that we get weekly is, what should I be doing now? And I'm like, we're trying to educate everybody to empower you to make the best decisions that you can, and bringing your idea. So here's another idea of something that is physical, it's used everywhere. Not a lot of people know about it yet. It's almost like, it feels to me, in I would say 2011, 2012, alternative assets, that phrase,
Yes.
nobody still knew what it, like, people were like, what is it? And I'm like, well, it's just investments outside of Wall Street, your traditional, and I don't like to even call that, but your conventional, traditional, kind of like Wall Street type of investments.
Yeah.
And I don't like those terms, but that's kind of what people understand them by. And now it's like, I mean, it really, over, I would say, the past 5 years, that's like the thing. And it's now the hottest thing, especially in the financial services area, going into, again, your Wall Street market. This is now the big phrase, is alternative assets. I feel like we're at kind of like a same kind of like time frame here, where I think like in the next 5 years, between 5 and 10, this is going to be everything that people are talking about. So we're giving you an early start just by listening to it here, right? But
and also, MC, just on that point, I was talking to a guy here in Ireland. He's a gold and silver guy, and he's actually minting the first sort of Irish coin. It's minted in Germany, but it'll be like you have the South African, the Canadian maple leaf, the cougar, all that stuff. So this would be the first one. But we were talking about what's happened in North America, because both of us agreed, like, and we always, we still look to America to see like what's happening in California. Likely will be happening in New York maybe in 6 months, and maybe a year later in Europe. So we're trying to see what's happening over there that could be useful here in Europe. And the US is still, I think, much more innovative. And when the going gets, we've a bit of a play, that expression, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Well, we say when the going gets tough, the weird get professional. And in a way, in America, the weird are getting professional, because you almost see this, like, and tell me if you agree with me or not, it's almost like a DIY of asset and investment classes. Like, I hear about people, ATM machines, self-storage, and these are not, as you said, sort of conventional or institutional. These are like grassroots. People are coming up with their own ideas of how can we, get a passive income without involving, maybe so much of the, the big players. So this is one of those rare examples where I honestly believe this is a very good idea that has started in Europe, and you'll be hearing more and more about it in North America. I mean, the metals themselves are making the news in the US simply because there's about $390 billion available in subsidies to, there's rare earths in North America, there's rare earths in Europe, but something I'll just say, just for some of your listeners that maybe didn't hear, the first thing that we didn't mention yet which is they're not, these raw materials, they're not like base metals, so they don't occur naturally in the Earth's crust. They're always they're very chemically similar, so they're always a byproduct of another raw material. Like gallium would be a byproduct of aluminum mining. Hafnium is a byproduct of zirconium. So, for example, for every 50 tons of zirconium, you'll only get 1 ton of hafnium. So you could say they're waste recyclable materials, and that's what makes them sort of limited and rare, even though they're available. For example, you'll see a lot of headlines in North America in the next 6 months, a year, that there's been like 1 trillion tons or 1 million tons of rare earths discovered in Wyoming. I've already heard it already, right? But in the industry, that's what's known as a maiden discovery. That doesn't mean anything yet, because there might only be 0.01% hafnium in that maiden discovery. There's a lot of that is waste. There's a lot of that just is not going to be able to be refined and processed. So again, you have to really, really, really pay attention to what you're hearing. There's such a thing as a maiden discovery, and then there's what we call the TREO, the true rare earth content as well. So you will be hearing more about them, but my suggestion is do some research and get a good education on them as well.
Fascinating. It's almost like how gasoline was the waste byproduct of kerosene when they when they got that out into the oil. It's fascinating. Louis, this is great. Thank you so much for the update and sharing more about these trends. And as always, your insights and knowledge is so much appreciated with regards to this asset class and overall investing, plan B, and much, much more. So always providing a ton of value for our listeners and our viewers. Where can folks learn more about what you do? I know the website that you have, you've got a ton of just information on there. If people want to read more, where can they follow you? And then also, how can they reach out and get in touch with you to have a discussion to see if this might be something that they're interested in?
Okay, so yeah, they could go directly to the website, which is strategicmetalsinvest.com. Or alternatively, I'd be very happy if they emailed me directly and mentioned, that they'd listened in to the podcast and just mention your name maybe as well. My email then would be Louis, LOUIS at strategicmetalsinvest.com.
Awesome. Yeah, I've got great feedback from a lot of our community, our listeners, and our viewers. Louis gives you the white glove treatment coming through our network. So appreciate it, Louis. Again, thank you so much for coming on the show, and again, just always providing so much value for all of my listeners and my viewers.
Thank you very much, MC. Thank you.
And thank you to my listeners and my viewers for, again, spending your most valuable resource, your time, once again with me. Everything Cashflow Ninja is at cashflowninja.com. There's podcasts, books, reports, and much, much more. And don't forget to sign up for our weekly newsletter. It's the #1 newsletter in the alternative wealth strategy and alternative asset investing space, the Wealth Dojo. You can sign up for the Wealth Dojo to get that weekly in your inbox at cashflowninja.com/subscribe. Until next time, live infinitely.
This presentation is for educational and informational purposes only. The information being presented and considered does not consider your particular financial objectives or situation, and it does not make personalized recommendations. This material is not intended to replace the advice of a qualified tax and legal advisor or other qualified professionals, and you should not use the information in place of a customized consultation with a licensed professional regarding your specific personal financial objectives, situation, and needs. We believe the information provided is reliable, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, timeliness, or completeness.